Do you have the book? Do you have the book with the words? Wait. I'll just have to find mm-hmm. Yeah. Jaya Radha Madhav Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhav Kunja Bihari. Gopikana Vallabha Giri Vallabha. Gopikana Vallabha Giri Vallabha. Yashodanandana Brajagana Yashodanandana Brajagana Yamatira Anata Yamatira Dayarata Madhavi Dayarata Madhavi Javiva Rupijana Bhava Viri Varada Rupijana Bhava Viri Varada Yashodanandana Brajagana Yashodanandana Brajagana Rangana Yamunatira Vanatava Yamunatira Vanatava Jaya Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Jaliha Gopikana Vallabha Giri Gopikana Vallabha Giri Yashodhana Brajagana Rangana Yashodhanandana Brajagana Rangana Yamunatira Vanata Yamunatira Vanata Jaya Rama Jaya 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Shila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You can use this book if you like. I can use my phone. You can use this book so we can read the verse and I can read it off of my phone. I'll just pull it up for you. What text am I doing? Is it 43? I count on Tarek to post it so that I know that I'm right.
Text 33.
33. Hare Krishna, oh man, I was. Oh, I think. Okay, yep, 33. That's great. Okay, here you go. Yeah. Okay. All good. Okay. Hare Krishna. Yanugrahartam bhajatam padamalam anamarupo bhagavan anantataha namani rupani na janma karma peje samahyam parama prasidatu Yanugrahartam bhajatam padamalam anamarupo bhagavan anantataha namani rupani na janma karma peje samahyam parama prasidatu Tatu Yonugrahartam bhajatam padamalam anamarupo bhagavananantataha namani rupani na chajanma karma peje samayam padama prasidatu. I forgot to say, we're reading from 6th Canto, Chapter 4, the Hamsagui Prayers, Text 3. Would anyone like to repeat online?
Yonugrahartam bhajatam paramulam anamarupo bhagavan anantaha namami rupani cha janmaka karmabir peje samayam parama prasiddhatu.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, word for word. Who, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Anugraha Artam, to show his causeless mercy. Bhajatam, to the devotees who always render devotional service. Padamulam, to his transcendental lotus feet. Anama, with no material name. Rupa, or material form. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ananta, unlimited, all-pervading, and eternally existing. Namani, transcendental holy names. Rupani, his transcendental forms. Cha, also. Janma Karma Pi, with his transcendental birth and activities. Peje, manifests. Sa, he. Mahyam, unto me. Parama, the supreme. Prasidatu, may he be merciful. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is inconceivably opulent, who is devoid of all material names, forms, and pastimes, and who is all-pervading, is especially merciful to the devotees who worship his lotus feet. Thus he exhibits transcendental forms and names with his different pastimes. May that Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose form is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss, be merciful to me. Purport: in regard to the significant word anama-rupa, Sri Sridhar Swami says, Prakriti nama rupa rahitopi. The word anama, which means having no name, indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no material name. Simply by chanting the name of Narayana to call his son, Ajamil attains salvation. This means that Narayana is not an ordinary mundane name. It is non-material. The word Anama, therefore, indicates that the names of the Supreme Lord do not belong to this material world. The vibration of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is not a material sound, and similarly, the form of the Lord and his appearance and activities are all non-material. To show his causeless mercy to the devotees as well as to the non-devotees, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in this material world with names, forms, and pastimes, all of which are transcendental. Unintelligent men who cannot understand this think that these names, forms, and pastimes are material, and therefore they deny that he has a name or a form. Considered with scrutiny, the conclusion of non-devotees who say that God has no name and that of devotees who know that his name is not material are practically the same. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no material name, form, birth, appearance, or disappearance, but nevertheless he takes his birth, janma. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:6, Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakritim svamadhishtaya sambhavami atma mayaya. Although the Lord is unborn, Aja, and his body never undergoes material changes, he nevertheless appears as an incarnation, maintaining himself always in the transcendental stage, Shuddhasattva. Thus he exhibits his transcendental forms, names, and activities. That is his special mercy toward his devotees. Others may continue merely arguing about whether the absolute truth has form or not, but when a devotee, by the grace of the Lord, sees the Lord personally, he becomes spiritually ecstatic. Unintelligent persons say that the Lord does nothing. Actually, he has nothing to do, but nevertheless he has to do everything, because without his sanction no one can do anything. The unintelligent, however, cannot see how he is working and how the entire material nature is working under his direction. His different potencies work perfectly. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate nata samascha vyadikashcha drishyate parasya shaktir vividhaiva shriyate sabhaviki jnana balakriyacha. He has nothing to do personally, for since his potencies are perfect, everything is immediately done by his will. Persons to whom the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not revealed cannot see how he is working. And therefore they think that even if there is God, he has nothing to do or has no particular name. Actually, the Lord's name already exists because of his transcendental activities. The Lord is sometimes called Guna Karma Nama because he is named according to his transcendental activities. For example, Krishna means all attractive. This is the Lord's name because his transcendental qualities make him very attractive. As a small boy, he lifted Govardhan Hill, and in his childhood he killed many demons. Such activities are very attractive, and therefore he is sometimes called Giridhari, Madhusudana, Aghanishudana, and so on. Because he acted as the son of Nanda Maharaj, he is called Nanda Tanuja. These names already exist, but since non-devotees cannot understand the names of the Lord, he is sometimes called Anama, or nameless. This means that he has no material names. All his activities are spiritual, and therefore he has spiritual names. Generally, less intelligent men are under the impression that the Lord has no form. Therefore, he appears in his original form as Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, to carry out his mission of participating in the battle of Kurukshetra and pastimes to protect the devotees and vanquish the demons, Paritranaya Sadhunam Vinashaya Tradushkritam. This is his mercy. For those who think that he has no form and no work to do, Krishna comes to show that indeed he works. He works so gloriously that no one else can perform such uncommon acts. Although he appeared as a human being, he married 16,108 wives, which is impossible for a human being to do. The Lord performs such activities to show people how great he is, how affectionate he is, and how merciful he is. Although his original name is Krishna, Krishnastu Bhagavan Svayam, he acts in unlimited ways, and therefore, according to his work, he has many, many thousands of names. Om Gyana Timanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Anmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, I did prepare class on the mic first. Proud of myself. because I wrote down that I was giving class on 43, but I did prepare for 33. So, I wanted to read the translation again. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is inconceivably opulent, who is devoid of all material names, forms, and pastimes, and who is all-pervading, is especially merciful to the devotees who worship his lotus feet. Thus he exhibits transcendental forms and names with his different pastimes. May that Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose form is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss, be merciful to me. So this whole purport is talking about, well, how Krishna is nameless and formless, but that refers to material name and form, and that while he doesn't have those things, he does have spiritual name and spiritual form. So, yeah, I was thinking it's kind of like saying, it's like, I don't have a car, I have a sports car. So Krishna, yeah, doesn't have something just mundane. He has something super excellent, which is his, yeah, Satchidananda Vigraha. So, in order to enter into a relationship with Krishna, who is pure spirit, we get to engage in the process of bhakti yoga, which some say is a life of austerities. I never like fully got that. I guess in some ways it is austere, but there's actually so much enjoyment in practicing bhakti yoga. And really the reason it feels hard is because on the one hand we have a desire to serve Krishna, and then on the other hand we have our material desires that continuously pop up and um, yeah, can be impediments. And unless we are able to dovetail those desires with Krishna's desires, or yeah, take guidance and do the same thing. So yeah, a life full of austerities to attain Krishna. It sounds harsh, but I don't really think it's that bad. It's actually very blissful, very joyful. And in this world, it's not like if we're not practicing bhakti, or even if we are practicing bhakti, but we move out of the temple, we move into the temple, we move to a different devotional community, we change which room we're living on the property, or yeah, I have these friends or those friends or whatever. Like you can't, if you're doing all that in an effort to escape austerity or escape some miseries. I'm expert at this, that's why I can talk about it. Um, then you're actually fooling yourself, because there's always austerities in this world, no matter what, yeah, what you do. Like often, Devi Maharaj will give the example that there might be devotees in the devotional community that you don't see eye to eye with, you don't get along with, they really irk you. Um, but it's not like if you go out and get a job, like that's it, I'm done with associating with devotees so much, and you go out and get a job, and then what, there's nobody there that's like gonna get on your nerves or annoy you, or even you have a manager that you don't like and you feel like is harsh. Um, yeah, and same thing with being punctual. Like, yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, it's just devotional service. I don't have to be on time. I mean, again, I'm also expert at this. I'm consistently 5 minutes late for everything, but at least I'm consistent in that. Um, and yeah, so we had kind of an issue with this at Bhakti Lounge, like that the volunteers would come and they're like, oh, we just see it as like a pretty casual thing, so we don't have to be on time. And it's like, no, no, but if, I mean, they were woofing, so they didn't have to pay rent or food or anything like that, so they should have been on time. But it's like, oh, it's just, it's pretty casual. Like we're not getting paid, so we don't really have to be on time or do a nice job or do a thorough job. And even as devotees, we might slip into that subconsciously. But actually, we should do things with more care, more attention, more punctuality than even if we were just doing something for our own sense gratification. And I was hearing a class by Ram Das Prabhu, who some of you might know, that lives in New Zealand. And he was saying, what point was he making? Just that yeah, essentially like we might even be having a bad day like everybody does, but if you have if your duty you have duty consciousness, which is so important, and some regulation, then you are going to show up for your service no matter what the mind is telling you. And that's not just a devotional service thing. Like um if you're working, you have a job, like you might be having a horrible day, but you know at 3 o'clock I gotta go and start my shift or whatever. So duty consciousness is so important, and that's the beginning of actually developing real love. So yeah, anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about satisfaction because I've been thinking about that and just feeling very yeah, satisfied for the past couple months living here on the farm. Um, and I wanted to read from Bhagavad Gita 17:16 about how this is how it ties in, how satisfaction is an austerity of the mind. Um, wait, oh, 17:16. Okay, so the translation is, and satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. Purport: to make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. It should be so trained that it can be always thinking of doing good for others. The best training for the mind is gravity in thought. One should not deviate from Krishna consciousness and must always avoid sense gratification. To purify one's nature is to become Krishna conscious. Satisfaction of the mind can be obtained only by taking the mind away from the thoughts of sense gratification. The more we think of sense enjoyment, the more the mind becomes dissatisfied. In the present age, we unnecessarily engage the mind in so many different ways for sense gratification, and so there is no possibility of the mind's becoming satisfied. The best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories, as in the Puranas and the Mahabharata. One can take advantage of this knowledge and thus become purified. The mind should be devoid of duplicity, and one should think of the welfare of all. Um, oh yeah, okay, I'll just finish it. Silence means that one is always thinking of self-realization. The person in Krishna consciousness observes perfect silence in this sense. Control of the mind means detaching the mind from sense enjoyment. One should be straightforward in his dealings and thereby purify his existence. All these qualities together constitute austerity in mental activities. So, Prabhupada, like 6 times, 6 different ways, says that detach makes this point about that we have to detach the mind from thoughts of sense enjoyment. So he says that that's what making the mind austere is detaching it from sense gratification. Um, it says that gravity of thought is also detaching the mind from sense gratification. It says purifying one's nature is also detaching the mind from sense gratification. Satisfaction, also taking the mind away from thoughts of sense enjoyment. And the last one was controlling the mind means detaching it from sense gratification. So yeah, this is a point I've been thinking about a lot, that whenever I notice the mind wandering or just like, as the mind does, it like fantasizes, concocts, plans, oh, it's going to be like this and it's going to be like that. And it is really all just a mental concoction, actually. And we'll go into like a bit about that too, like an analogy. I love analogies. So, anyway, so yeah, I've been trying to practice this more, is like whenever my mind goes to that and starts developing like a whole um I don't even know, like, yeah, a whole alternate reality essentially. Um, then I'm like, okay, let me just try to think of Krishna actually. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's actually like something that has to be practiced daily. And then, of course, we're so blessed to be living here and just in this community in general, in a devotional community in general, because like I wrote in my offering to Devamrita Maharaj, I'm constantly surrounded by bhakti sense objects. So it's one thing to you notice your mind wandering and then you're like, okay, I need to bring it back to Krishna. And then that works, but it's also like we have devotional service, we have reading daily. Um, yeah, chanting, morning program, taking prasadam, all kinds of different things that just naturally engage the mind. And it's almost like we don't even have to, in a sense, we don't even have to be conscious of it. I mean, it's definitely more potent and way better if we are conscious of it, but just by default, by living here, it's nice that, or if you live in a, you make your home Krishna conscious, then just by default, um, you're at least partially having the mind on Krishna. So, yeah, anyway, just a reminder for myself to keep practicing that. So, yeah, again, today's purport is about how we're originally connected to Krishna. And I liked Madhupan's class the other day about how she was talking about that verse from the Shikshastika that, what is it like, please pick me up from this ocean of birth and death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. And just the way she explained it, like actually being like lost at sea or like in a crazy turbulent ocean. And sometimes whenever I just mechanically say that verse from the Shikshastakam, then I'm like, oh, an ocean. I'm not really understanding the purport that being lost in the middle of the ocean is a crazy experience. And it's completely like um yeah, I mean, people have hallucinations, all kind of stuff, which I'll talk about. I did some research on like what is it really like to be lost at sea? Like, do people? I was thinking of that movie Castaway with what's his name, Tom Hanks, and how he's like, he's got Wilson, the volleyball, and he's like screaming at it and gets so attached to it, and like, and we can look at that and like laugh, but our position is literally the same thing. Like, we're just getting attached to like practically a old like beat up volleyball. Um, and trying to decorate it and make it look all nice, and then we get so attached to it. But sorry, I get off track so easily. Anyway, yes, the verse from the Shikshastakam. So please pick me up from this ocean of birth and death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. So we can think of an ocean like, oh, okay, we're on the shore and we're just like we can wade in up to like our knees or something like that. Um, but that's not the ocean, the kind of ocean that that verse is referring to. It's like, yeah, literally being stuck out at sea, no help, the sun's beating down on you, getting dehydrated, sleep deprived. So, yeah, I looked up, there's like some famous, I guess, recent cases of people being lost at sea, and even one that's like there was all kinds of articles on it. Like Vice did a whole interview with this guy that they were him and his friend's son, and then their guide, I guess, was I think they were where's is Manila in the Philippines? Anyway, I think that they were in like the Philippines or something like that, and they were trying to go to one of the small islands, like off the coast. Um, and anyway, one thing led to another. The storm got really bad, and then, or just the waves got really crazy. And they ended up being lost at sea for 52 hours, just 52 hours. Um, I mean, that's a lot, but like in terms of how it affected them, what I'll tell you guys and read through, it's pretty crazy. So yeah, anyway, so these guys they were like, "Oh yeah, we'll just go to this nearby island." They could even see the island. And so they went out to sea and they had heard, "Okay, well, it might get pretty choppy," but they decided to go for it anyway because their tour guide was like, "It'll be fine." They get there and things get pretty crazy, and then the wave topples over their boat. They're yeah, floundering about, and then somehow or other they get like back in the boat, and then they're waiting there and waiting, and ships are passing them, and they're like trying to wave them down. They don't have what's that, like a flare gun, anything like that. Eventually the guy just jumps over and he's like, okay, I'm gonna swim to that island and go get help. So they were waiting on this guy and he just like drowned at sea. So anyway, my point in telling this story is that basically these guys were just like totally thrashing about, and that's like what we do in this ocean of material miseries is we're not just paddling around near the shore. We're completely like a lost cause. And also, like, you're stranded in the middle of the ocean, but we also lose our complete sense of identity in this hallucination that we're the controllers and we're the enjoyers. Similar to how this one guy in particular that's telling his story, like in the Vice interview, he, I mean, he was having crazy hallucinations. Like basically, he was seeing after like maybe 1.5 days, and they were completely sleep deprived. They had no shade, and the sun's beating down on them, so they're sleep deprived and dehydrated. And this guy started hallucinating, and he's seeing all the things that he wants to see, like in terms of rescue. He's seeing like the marinas, he's seeing people on park benches waving. And mind you, like the waves are, yeah, the waves are so crazy. And then he starts seeing the waves as like concrete walls. And he's like screaming out to people, to come save them, or he's so happy to see them because he sees they're like, in their parked cars in the marina or something, waving at him. He thought that they had contacted a concierge at the hotel and they were sending help. So he's hallucinating all the things that he wants to see. And similarly, we do the same, where it's like, okay, we're actually in a super precarious position, and we know that deep, deep down. Um, because I mean, yeah, people have multiple identity crises throughout their lives. So we know something's not right. We're not supposed to be here. And then because we feel like we have no other recourse, or we're hallucinating, we just try to see what we want to see. Like, oh, there's hope here, there's hope there. Let me just stay in this delusion, in this fantasy. So yeah, just like this guy, basically we start to see, you know, possibilities in the material world for success, for meaning, for potential, for enjoyment in places that it does not actually exist. Just like this guy is just, I mean, he's just looking out at the waves and is seeing people on park benches. So it's all just a concoction of the mind that, oh, this is, if I do this, then it's going to be like my saving grace, or if I do this, it's going to give me fulfillment. Yeah, if it's a material thing we're putting our trust in. So yeah, and even this, it just gets so real. Like it's not even just like a hallucination, like something that's just in the mind's eye, but the subtle body actually is so powerful that then it manifests in a gross way. So like for this man that was lost at sea, he he somehow or other, oh, he started imagining like, oh, he's floating near the shore, but it just had happened that he actually had like fallen off the boat and was just floating in the crazy turbulent water and actually about to drown, and then his friend grabbed him and pulled him back up. But basically, like that, this man he wasn't just seeing things, like he was feeling it. He was getting into the whole, bhava of the experience. And similarly, yeah, we do the same, where it's not just like, oh yeah, it's a concoction of the mind. It's like all of this is like, oh, it feels so real. Um, so yeah, the subtle body is so powerful that it manifests. I mean, this is common knowledge in naturopathy too, that what's going on in the subtle body does affect the gross body. And then there's other examples, like people have like they get their arm cut off in war or something, and then they have the sensation of like a phantom limb. There's phantom pregnancies. There's I couldn't remember what it's called, like yeah, something, whenever, like in the Matrix and stuff, where it became popular, like spoon bending, like people can like do things with their mind. Is that telekinesis? There's like other names for it too. But to the person in knowledge, they can see that all of this hallucination is just an illusion, or that's what it is. It's a hallucination. So also to the person in Krishna consciousness, they can see that, um, yeah, all of the the notion that one can get fulfillment out of matter is a complete hallucination and just a wishful thinking concoction of the mind. So, yeah, and once we kind of if those dreams or hallucinations get shattered, which if we're lucky, they will. If we're lucky as before coming in contact with devotees, and if we're lucky as devotees, Krishna will lovingly shatter our hopes for fulfillment through matter. So that's what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that four different types of people come to him, and one, probably the majority of people in today's day and age, are the materially distressed. I mean, I know I was definitely one of those. And yeah, so, and Krishna might also do this repeatedly throughout our devotional life, which is also very, very much his mercy and is actually relieving us of this great hallucinatory burden that we have. Like we're just carrying a sack of rocks on our back, and we're like, or like that example, right? That somebody's like hugging a thorny tree and they're like, it hurts, but they won't. Like you just have to let go. So, yeah, anyway, but if somebody doesn't have Krishna consciousness or they don't come in contact with devotees, then this distress, um, or this, if they have some kind of identity crisis or they realize that the way that they thought they were going to get fulfillment out of matter doesn't actually transpire, take place, then they lose all hope. And, people commit suicide or they get really into intoxication. They just cannot deal with the pain of material existence. And similarly, this guy that, he was on the boat now telling a story, he said that after he realized that like, oh, his hallucinations were actually false, like nobody was really there, he said, that's when I really broke down. I gave up all hope and tried to wrestle with the concept of dying out there. So that's totally our position in the material world is if we give up all hope and then we try to wrestle with the concept of just dying out there without any meaning or purpose. So then the subtle body false ego comes into play again and it's like, oh, you have to create some kind of identity for yourself. You have to like grab onto something, and we can see that this happens at like key points throughout life is that the um, well, I mean, example, right, is like the baby in the womb is crying out to Krishna, and then it's born, and it's just so painful. And essentially, that's the first identity crisis, is it pops out, and then, if they're lucky nowadays, the child, first of all, is able to actually be, given birth to or birthed, and then the parents, the mother, if they're lucky, are there and receive the child, and then it's like complete illusion starts. Where it's like, oh, okay, this is like I'm the center of the universe, so this is my identity. And whereas right before the baby knew like I'm in Maya, this is so painful. How do I cope with this? And then boom, false ego comes into play. And then later on in our lives, um, maybe around the age that one goes off to school or just some event happens where you're separated from your mother. And then there's another identity crisis there where it's like, oh my gosh, who am I? What's my identity? Like I was just completely, like um in a what are those relationships called? Like symbiotic or something relationship with this person, like those little fish that follow the shark around and just like feed off of it. And then if that doesn't take place, then oh my gosh, how am I going to get my needs met? Who am I? So that happens. Like some of you might even have memories of like, oh, your first day of school or how much kids like throw a fit. And then later on in like whenever you go to, junior high or something like that, then there's definitely a lot of identity crises there, trying to fit in, trying to craft your identity once again. And then young adulthood, leaving for school, or yeah, so many people, right, like around the age of 18 or 18 to 22 have this kind of like, who am I? What is going to give me fulfillment in life? And how do I cope with, people offering me all the illicit activities of Kali Yuga? I mean, they don't think that it's like all the illicit activities of Kali Yuga, but yeah, am I gonna do drugs? Am I not? Am I going to enter a relationship with this person? Am I not? Do I want to study? Do I not? Like just so many questions. midlife crisis. Anyway, you get the point, is like constantly there's this underlying feeling of like, oh my gosh, something's not right. Like I'm not wanted, I don't fit in. And then we have to do something, a false ego kicks in to accommodate for that. Whenever really this original feeling of I don't belong here, I don't fit in, I'm not loved, I feel disconnection, I feel a lack of purpose. That's because we're disconnected from, or we don't have knowledge of, or we don't think we are connected to Krishna, um, who is, yeah, where we can experience full love, full connection, full purpose, all these things through being conscious of Krishna. And so it's that original pain actually that just gets like warped and yeah, manifests in all different kind of ways in our search for identity in the material world. And yeah, it's just anyway, I found it really helpful to contemplate. And there's so many more like details about this, but uh just that like whenever we are feeling something like that, um that actually it's all, I mean, in principle, like I know it, yeah, okay, it's all I'm feeling this way because I'm disconnected from Krishna, but to really see how each identity crisis and how we put up so many layers of like so many pretenses, so many facades, even as devotees, like or attachment to like I am known for this service, so this is the service I'm going to do, or like um I'm known for being, I don't even know. I'm known for this, I'm known for that. People glorify me for this, people glorify me for that. So then one can become like attached to that. But if that's taken away, like let's say, I mean, this classic example, there's been um so many examples of Sankirtan devotees, or rather Gauri, um, that, you know, their health gets bad or their back gives out or, you know, one thing or another, and they aren't able to do that service anymore. And if it's like you're attached to that as your identity and it wasn't, um, you know, simply for Krishna's pleasure, then yeah, you're gonna have a bit of an identity crisis. Not that I know anyone like that, but anyway, it's good purification. So, hmm, yeah, so if we don't know that our actual deepest dissatisfaction and crisis is coming from this disconnect with Krishna, um, then we try to remedy the situation in so many ways. Like I was trying to just think about your day and how many ways like we actually spend so much energy in this life just trying to like fix situations or control situations or just hold things together. Even not, you know, we might not be a manager or something like that, but just in the way that we um, portray ourselves to other devotees or portray ourselves to ourselves or yeah, we just spend a lot of time, or at least me, even as a devotee, spend a lot of time trying to remedy miseries or what I anticipate might be some kind of misery. Um, but really, the we're just kind of lifting ourselves out of dissatisfaction to temporary satisfaction, and then we get plunged back under like the dunking chair, you know, the medieval waterboarding, that's what it's called. Um, So yeah, we're just yeah, go get like a gas bear and then go back down, gas bear, go back down. So really, the solution to all of that is to deepen our connection with Krishna. And like I was saying at the beginning of the class, practice that like, okay, my mind is going off to thinking of so many ways that this, you know, my needs are in this regard or that regard is going to be met, and like contemplating that and fantasizing about that or whatever. And then it's like, okay, I'm just looking for some kind of like quick fix, like quick escape. Whereas the real solution is to, yeah, become more conscious of Krishna or do things that move us in that direction. So that doesn't mean like I'm saying that, oh yeah, we're having some mental problem or we're having some difficulty or there's something like actually really wrong with, I don't know, something, there's some dispute or something's going on in the devotional community, and we're just like Yeah, everybody should just ignore it and chant Hare Krishna. Although becoming more Krishna conscious ourselves does certainly help in so many ways to remedy situations. But at the same time, like practical measures can be taken as long as they're in relation to Krishna and we're not just trying to do it for like, oh man, if I get this sense gratification, then like, oh, I'll get some relief kind of thing. Because it doesn't really work. And just to end, I wanted to read two purports. Well, one verse and two purports from the Srimad Bhagavatam to corroborate what I'm saying, so that I'm not just going off the rails here. And I think I screenshot it. Okay, so I'm just gonna Google it. 3:7:10. So the first one is from Srimad Bhagavatam 3:7:10. And Prabhupada says, the living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off. Purport. A teacher in school once threatened his pupil that he would cut off the pupil's head and hang it on the wall so that the child could see how his head had been cut off. The child became frightened and stopped his mischief. Similarly, the miseries of the pure soul and the disruption of his self-identification are managed by the external energy of the Lord, which controls those mischievous living entities who want to go against the will of the Lord. Actually, there is no bondage or misery for the living entity, nor does he ever lose his pure knowledge. In his pure consciousness, when he thinks a little seriously about his position, he can understand that he is eternally subordinate to the mercy of the Supreme, and that his attempt to become one with the Supreme is a false illusion. Life after life, the living entity falsely tries to lord it over material nature and become the lord of the material world, but there is no tangible result. At last, when frustrated, he gives up his material activities and tries to become one with the Lord and speculate with much jugglery of words, but without success. These activities are performed under the dictation of the illusory energy. The experience is compared to the experience of one's having his head cut off in a dream. The man whose head has been cut off also sees that his head has been cut off. If a person's head is severed, he loses his power to see. Therefore, if a man sees that his head has been cut off, it means that he thinks like that in hallucination. Similarly, a living entity is eternally subordinate to the Supreme Lord, and he has this knowledge with him. But artificially, he thinks that he is God himself, and that although he is God, he has lost his knowledge due to Maya. This conception has no meaning, just as there is no meaning to seeing one's head being cut off. This is the process by which knowledge is covered. And because this artificial rebellious condition of the living entity gives him all troubles, it is to be understood that he should take to his normal life as a devotee of the Lord and be relieved from the misconception of being God. Okay, I'm just going to keep reading. Well, it's almost done, but it's such a nice purport. The so-called liberation of thinking oneself God is that last reaction of avidya by which the living entity is entrapped. The conclusion is that a living entity deprived of eternal transcendental service to the Lord becomes illusioned in many ways. Even in his conditional life, he is the eternal servant of the Lord. His servitude under the spell of illusory Maya is also a manifestation of his eternal condition of service. Because he has rebelled against the service of the Lord, he is therefore put in the service of Maya. He is still serving, but in a perverted manner. He wants to get out when he wants to get out of this. When he wants to get out of service under material bondage, he next desires to become one with the Lord. This is another illusion. The best course, therefore, is to surrender unto the Lord and thus get rid of the illusory Maya for good, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Devi hiesha gunamai, mama maya dharaya, mamaiva ye prapadyante, mayam etam tarantite. So hopefully I said some version of what Prabhupada was just saying there. I think I did, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And there was just also one little snippet that I wanted to read from just more about this identity crisis that's in Srimad Bhagavatam 131 that I just read the other day in the purport. This is the chapter about the various incarnations of Krishna. And so, let me see if I can find it. Or maybe I screenshotted it. Hmm. Maybe it's not even that verse. Okay, so anyway, I'll just stop there. I did have it the other day, but I think that that's the purport, somewhere in the Canto 1, Chapter 3, that Prabhupada says that bound by such hallucinations, basically, yeah, but such hallucinations that one wants to surround themselves with the fallible soldiers and not desire to get out of just material comforts. So Prabhupada says, bound by such hallucinations, materialistic men prepare various plans for a still more comfortable life, but suddenly cruel death comes without mercy and takes away the great plan maker against his desire, forcing him to give up the present body for another body. And I don't know if that's what I actually wanted to read, but it's a good point that yeah, one is bound by these hallucinations, and so they continue making, fantasizing, making plans like this and like that. I'm going to enjoy in this material world, but luckily, if we are devotees, Krishna will, yeah, just like Dhruva Maharaj, give us fulfill our desires in a way that we will not want them anymore. Um, so that we can become more and more cleansed, have more and more satisfaction. So it might feel like tough love at times, but yeah, I can, at least to some degree, see it now, in hindsight, that it's actually a very, very the best manifestation of Krishna's care. Um, Now, I probably won't say that the next time it happens, but in hindsight, at least. So, does anybody have any corrections or questions or comments? Do you have anything, Ryan? Was it too intense? I'm mainly preaching myself.
Hi, Vo, I have a question.
I will.
You were saying at the very beginning of your class how the mind's never satisfied, like when we take shelter of material things. The mind, it's never satisfied in those activities. But then I was wondering, it's interesting because it seems like that's what the mind, I mean, unless you're very Krishna conscious, but if you're like myself, it seems like that's what the mind tries to go for, material activities as a source of satisfaction. So is that just a matter of needing to train the mind up more?
Yeah, great question. Because I've yeah tried and to deal with this a lot because I'm definitely not on the platform that like, oh, I'm, desiring such and such, so I should just chant like that'll do it. Um, Definitely my mind is not at that point. So I think that I mean I'm just going to speak from personal experience. Honestly, what I've found very helpful is that I think that in today's day and age, due to so much, what kind of adds to this, like seeking material solutions, even though we have knowledge of the Shastra, is one Maya. And then the other aspect is literally just the way that we grow up nowadays. We're so disconnected from like our internal reality, like no knowledge of like how am I feeling, what's happening. Like, I mean, again, that's like people just have such traumatic upbringings. And then if you ever see kids nowadays, like, and the parents just like, from the age of a baby, it's just like they are just in front of an iPad or like in front of a phone. So imagine like how disconnected you are. So yeah, we might, at least in my experience, it's been like, okay, well, I'm actually wanting connection. Like I'm wanting to go hang out with devotees or have some association of devotees or this or that. But I'm so disconnected from like how I'm actually feeling or what my needs are that then I'm like, actually, it's because I really want to eat four of Ken's muffins or like something, or it's because I'm feeling disconnection. Oh, it's because I really like, I think Instagram will like do it for me. So at least in my case, it's been helpful to like do that whole like, okay, what am I feeling? What's the need behind it? And then how can I take responsibility for then using the Krishna conscious sense objects to fulfill that need? And personally, for me, that's been a very helpful, like taking a material process and dovetailing it in Krishna consciousness so that I know what's the need. And bhakti's so great that like it literally has so many different aspects that you can apply to fulfill your different needs for um yeah, whatever it might be, fun, purpose, connection, love. um anyway, does that help? That's not like, I mean, I don't have something from Shastra to back that up at the moment, but
That's really helpful, Dina-Palika. Thank you.
okay, I think the doors are about to open. Thank you all. Granta Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.